Hello and welcome to our GetCast Now weekly seminar. This week with our very special guest, Stephen Belber, wonderful writer and artist in and around New York and all over, who I met, I think about a year and a half ago, shooting Tommy, a TV show on NBC, which he wrote, starring Edie Falco. And we had a really great night directed by Alan Arkin, and Stephen was there, and obviously I was doing a scene with Edie, and then Stephen was nice enough to talk to me afterwards about the journey of being a writer. You know, I've been writing a pilot, and he was so nice and answered my emails and talked to me about it. So welcome, Stephen. We're really glad to have you.
Thank you for asking. It's very nice to be here.
When I reached out to you on email, I reached out to you about how to sort of pitch a script for television and sort of break into television. And I don't want to go into that whole thing, but you are somebody who has had so much success and is known as a playwright and then started writing for TV. How many years ago?
I had an early foray, like in 2000, probably on Law and Order was my first real job, and that kind of came out of that a play of mine being a little indie movie, and I got an agent out of that and that. But then I really went back into movies for a long time. I was having some luck with spec scripts, and so I did a couple. I did I did a Rescue Me at the time. And then I really kind of was like, I want to do movies. I was having success. I got to direct a couple movies, and it wasn't until later, and I did a pilot or two early on, but then I took a real break and I missed sort of like, oh, everyone's getting into TV now. That's the golden age, all that. So sort of bad ass backwards kind of career management, but had fun sort of in the movie world for a while, and then started getting back writing pilots, and again, sort of not being drawn as much to the staffing because I wanted to create my own. So have been writing pilots, without huge luck in getting them made. So I took some staffing jobs along the way, like with Tommy and stuff. But I sort of wanted to go down with the ship. I wanted it to be my ideas. And so I'm still battling away at that. But with, it keeps me happy.
And thank you for giving me the background for this year as a writer and all of us being sort of out of work. Has that been a fertile time for you? Have you really gotten all those I want to really bang this screenplay out?
No, I didn't really do that as much as I spent the first half of sort of pandemic world, or the first half of last year, really pursuing sort of big studio writing jobs in terms of not studio, but TV. Like there were good projects that were coming my way that I was vying for, and I got one of those. But then I had a play that I had written that had not been produced, and I did a play reading on Zoom early on, sort of in the pandemic, and that sort of inspired me to try and make it as a film. And so I was able to find sort of very low budget funding, and it was sort of COVID friendly. It was a 3-person play that became pretty much of a 3-hander chamber piece movie, and was able to do that in the fall. So I got productive in that sense. Like I just, for writers have a way easier than actors, because we can just self-generate. And I think there was a moment that's probably now more glutted up of where, Hollywood didn't know what to do except to order and scripts. Now they have too many, but since they weren't filming, they were just buying. They were looking to buy more, I think, for a brief minute there.
I love that you took what you already had and made it into your own film. If you don't mind me asking, was this self-funded, or did you go out and get funding?
Yeah. No, I went to, I have a great agent at my agency who does packaging, indie film.
Nice.
And he was a guy who came from the world of indie producing. So he knew a couple of projects that I was trying to do, but he also knew the last film I had directed, which was also a play of mine. So he knew that was sort of my thing. And so I sent it to him, and I had one kind of noted actor attached. And he's like, yeah, I think we could find a way to people are looking for sort of what to do now, because no one knows what to do. So he sent it out. We got a major amount of passes. But one of the guys who had been a junior producer on an earlier film, on my earlier film, the Patrick Stewart thing, was like, oh, he had a stream of funding that kind of came out of Kentucky, of all places. So it was a New York City film that we shot in Kentucky, mostly indoors for New York. So, but it was lucky. I mean, it was like a real risk for the financiers to sort of take
Hmm.
on this tiny little thing, which may or may not pay off for them. Where we're trying to get into festivals now and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was about to say, so is this on VOD or anywhere where we can see it at this point?
No, I really just finished the post this past month. So we're you know, it was sort of conceived to be a quick to market. Let's try and get in there. If the streamers are looking for content, you know, this year because
Mm-hmm.
they haven't been shooting, you know, maybe we can slip in there. So I was sort of and am sort of hoping we could sort of we have a product now that's ready to go out. I think it's still considered a conventional wisdom to try to, in this case, get into Tribeca and use
Hmm.
that as a platform to sell it. And if not, you know, try to maybe have a 24-hour sort of you know, live link that you can get a lot of people to watch at once and hopefully get a bid. So
Gotcha.
it's still sort of the classic indie scrambling for distribution.
Yeah.
The streamer world's a little different, but because it's so small a piece, it's not like it's not an easy one. It's really I'm quite proud of it, but it's pretty verbose.
Nice. Nice. Well, please share any link when we get to that point where, we can watch it and blast it out to the audience if that's helpful.
I love it.
Um, yeah. You said something really interesting. I'm a reoccurring character on an HBO show and got cast, in COVID, and we shot 3 episodes. And it's a big, huge production. And but I was talking to one of the producers, and they're like, "Yeah, part of the reason why we're putting so much time and money into this is because we're not doing anything else, right? The usual pilot season and new shows coming out just isn't happening. So it's really great to hear that you are making your own work. Is that do you think going to be the model for the rest of this year, or what do you think?
I think they're now people have figured out how to do it. I mean, we were able to sneak in there before a lot of the big TV shows went back to work. We were in October, and even so, we
Mhm.
lost one of our actresses last minute because she was on This Is Us and she went back to work.
Mm.
Um, and so, but now it seems like everyone's shooting. You know, in terms of the sort of conventional pilot season, I think. I mean, I've been working with something with Netflix of where they're gonna develop it, I think, to the point where they're ready to do the whole thing. It's not about, for streamers, it seems to be less about making a pilot and seeing if they like it. Get it to the point, package it up, or cast it up to the point where they're ready to pull the trigger on 7 or 8 episodes or whatever. But I think people are doing that. I mean, you know better than I probably. They figured out how to spend the appropriate and manageable amount of money to make it safe. I mean, we spent 1/3 of our budget for this tiny indie I did on COVID prevention,
Yeah.
and it's still happening, I'm sure. And obviously, the streamers have the ability to do that. And I think A, with the vaccinations, and B, with more of a streamlined approach about how to do it. We were scrambling. We were kind of making it up as we went, as per the regulations that were being made up as they went. So
Yeah.
I think it's more of a streamlined process now, my guess would be.
In my slight experience, SAG has it really down what the
Yeah.
protocols are, right? And what you get paid for, and you do 2 COVID tests before you show up on set. You get paid
Mhm.
for them. Equity, I just got offered to go audition for a play, and it's still not approved by Equity. They don't
It's a good
know
show.
if isn't it? And this was a big Lort theater. It's not,
Yeah.
we're renting the Beckett to do a show on our own. They really don't have it together for live theater at this point. What do you see with that? I mean, you're a
I don't know
playwright,
what
isn't this? It just kills me.
it is crazy, and I don't mean to badmouth Equity, and I'm not really involved, but I've been watching through my wife, who does this sort of Moliere in the Park thing in Prospect Park, Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're outdoors, they're really ready to go with their first outdoor performance now, but it's taken Equity forever to sign off on it. Whereas when they were doing online productions, for the past year, SAG, it was a SAG contract, and SAG was great in making it happen. And Equity had sort of handed it over to SAG for a lot of the Zoom stuff. But now that they're reverting back, it seems a little wonky.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not trying to badmouth Equity either. It's just the difference in, live theater versus what we seem to be able to do with film and TV, which is actually more people and more close quarters. So you would think it would be easier. But
it's money.
Anyway,
I think a lot of it's money. I mean, Equity kind of comes down with these draconian things that no, theater and even Broadway producers are sort of like, really? And the economics are just a little crazy, I think. And whereas obviously TV film has more money.
Yeah, I hear you. Caroline, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask Stephen? You don't have to, but I know you always do.
I do. So Stephen, what I wanted to ask first was the piece that you were talking about adapting. I saw that there was an adaptation of Tape that happened. Is that what you were talking about, where Tape got adapted into kind of like a Zoom call? Is that what it was?
No, that was a young guy who sort of was working on that in his acting class, and he sort of thought he wanted to adapt it specifically for Zoom. So he sent me a draft, and I put my 2 cents in at one point, but that was all him. And he was really, he has started a company, I think, since then, dedicated to not just doing productions on Zoom, but really finding either commissioning plays and or adapting plays, so that you're breaking the fourth wall, but it's not direct address. And the actors are speaking to each other, but they're not in profile. Like it just kind of, it's like, how do you take best advantage of this medium for the intimacy of theater that combines the cool elements of film? But in film and TV, you're not going to get direct address into the camera unless it's, Rectan or whatever.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I just jump in? And I just want to point out what Stephen just said. An actor reached out who had an idea to an award-winning playwright and said, hey, can I do this? And said award-winning playwright gave his blessing and 2 cents. Ladies and gentlemen, notice. Anyway.
No, I mean, I'm glad you do say that, because it was great of him to do it. I am far from pretentious enough in that regard to be like, sacred about anything. I'm like, he wants to adapt it to a cool, totally evolving medium. Obviously, there are a lot of big players now getting in on that as well, trying to figure out, what theater is going to look like going forward in terms of digitalization and how to incorporate it / never replace it, but enhance it. And people with cool ideas should absolutely not hesitate. And you come from theater, Bruce, like every playwright's always a little bit like, will they ever do my work again? So of course we're not so cool as to be like, not going to answer the call.
No, it's just wonderful to hear, though, that something new and sort of fresh from what you've created can happen if somebody just reaches out and asks. Doesn't always happen, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it can happen. It gives me hope to hear that. Sorry, Caroline, I jumped in.
No, I was kind of going to say the same thing. It's just interesting to think about what other work can be adapted, and like what else is very, flexible in that way to be adapted for Zoom. And I think we're going to still be on here for a little while, even though it seems like things are going back to normal. So it's just really, I love that you were willing to just like be flexible about that. I love that.
And there's so much cool technology. Again, just my wife is working with these young, sort of just like fresh out of college tech kids to come up with, how to really incorporate design elements into live theater. So it's not just a recorded performance that kind of veers toward film, but and she has a whole design teams for every production, and where you can change backgrounds on a dime and lighting. And you're actually lighting every shot, and you're calling shots live during the Zoom broadcast, and it's live, and yet you get that live theater feel. So it's not just one-off edited. So there's a lot of possibility out there. And I think, I'm not dying to watch Zoom theater myself all the time, but I'm also totally up for being surprised by how cool it can be.
Mhm.
Yeah, Lev Harvey, who was on an earlier episode, did a production of the Dybbuk, which is an old Yiddish play with the Yiddish theater downtown, and I watched it. And they have backgrounds and changed shots and zoomed in. Now this was recorded, and I think they cut and put it together like a film, but it was originally done live. There's a lot to be done there. Hey, let's make sure to pitch what your wife is doing, please. Tell me more. Moliere in the Park. What is it called?
Yeah,
And what
she
is she doing?
started it about a year before COVID, and it was sort of, Shakespeare in the Park, but in Brooklyn. And she sort of realized that there's this space down on the other side, not the park slope side of the park, but the sort of south side or east side, south side of the park, at the Lafrac Center, which is the ice skating rink.
Yeah.
And in the outdoors, it becomes a splash pad for kids. But there's 2 weeks every spring where she got the guy who runs it and Prospect Park Alliance to sort of give her that space as an in-kind sort of donation. And so they had their inaugural season was actually a series of readings. But the idea is to get really good, hip New York actors out there, make it free, absolutely, so that the entire park is sort of invited. And so she got sort of like some Bloomberg philanthropy. She got, and it's slowly been gaining speed. Then she had to sort of pivot online. But now, as they say, they're going back. They're going to do Tartuffe with Raul Esparza. And yeah, it's great stuff. And they did cool online stuff.
Yeah, I watched whatever was live streamed earlier on. I watched it. It was so great. I loved it.
Yeah, it's nice. And it's not going to be just confined to Moliere. They're going to sort of take contemporary plays that look at history through a contemporary, lens, and sort of see how they can contribute. And they've gotten some decent press from the Times, and so yeah, I've just been watching the whole time. She sits at this desk and just goes nuts trying to fundraise, cast, devise technologically interesting stuff, and it's pretty wild.
She's the artistic director.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Otherwise known as full-time job.
Yes,
right?
Exactly right. Yeah. She has a managing director, and they just put in endless hours, paying themselves very little, and but I think it's gonna be around for a while, is my hunch.
That's wonderful to hear. We need things that give us hope, that are going to be around for a while and are adapting to the world we're in. I don't want to take too much of your time, Stephen. Anything else we should talk about with what you're doing now and what's coming up? Obviously, when the film comes out, please let us know where we can look for it. But what's next for Stephen?
I got a couple things. I'm writing a pilot for John Krasinski's company, optioned a book about the Chateau Marmont in Hollywood, a famous hotel. And so we sort of sold my idea to Paramount, which is where he has a deal as a studio. And so it's sort of looking at different times and eras of the Chateau, but seeing it. And in fact, each season is going to look at 2 eras and kind of ricochet them off of each other. And it's sort of the idea is that, this is this bastion, this sanctuary for artists and free thinkers, and it's a very tolerating it's a place that we're well before other institutions, where it's open-minded as to who can stay there. And it was sort of to take a sort of a Gosford Park, upstairs, downstairs, sort of like there's the staff, which is the core, and then you have these kind of insane people, and so it's fun and salacious, but at the same time there's something about the building itself which is just there since 1929 as this sort of holy beacon for the wayward and the misfits.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
I know.
Yeah, as a thorough New Yorker, like, any of the old LA history movies, whether it's Barton Fink or anything, always interest me as sort of a land I know nothing about. Are you an LA guy? Do you go out to LA? Or
I go out there
time?
quite a bit. I go out there, and I stayed there once when I was on the dime of a studio, and so I have an appreciation. I've had, a bunch of meetings there over the years, but no, I'm a total East Coast guy. And I was bummed because I sort of got the job over COVID and I wanted to go out there and immerse myself.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot written about it. And I feel like I have, the one time I was there, I was like, I want to stay at the Chateau Marmont. And they put me in this little room off the lobby that was like right next to the bathrooms where everyone from the bar was going. And I was really like this, they don't respect me. They shoved me in this little closet. And I was like really bummed. But I was still happy to be there. And then I'm reading one of these books about the history of it. And there's this guy who went out there to be a screenwriter in 1931. And he's like holed up in this little room off the lobby next to the bathrooms. And he's writing his screenplays day and night, never comes out. And it turns out that was Billy Wilder. And I was like, oh okay, all right, I'll take that company for the cubicle.
Yeah, baby, those are good footsteps to follow in.
But it has that kind of history, like everywhere. That the whole place is just imbued with cool history. So it's fun to write about that.
Cool.
I have a quick question since you say you're a New York person. What's your favorite New York like theater related memory, whether it was something that you wrote or worked on, or because I know like you did the Laramie Project cycle in 2013. What was a great moment for you?
I think, I mean, I was in on the original writing team of that, back in whenever that was, 1998 is when we first, and I was sort of just here, trying to make it as a writer. And I had a friend who had worked on Gross Indecency with Kaufman. And so
my wife was an intern.
Who was?
Plug, shameless plug. Wow. My wife was an intern.
No way.
Yeah. Before me, she was an intern. Marta Espitia was an intern right when she graduated NYU.
With
she
Tectonic?
With Tectonic, she worked on Gross Indecency a lot. Like when we started dating, like that was one of our dates. She took me to see Gross Indecency, and then the beginning of Laramie Project.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
I know.
Yeah, so we must have
right?
passed in the night because my friend brought me up. He was looking for his next project after Gross Indecency. And so they were doing play readings in his apartment. And she brought me up as an actor. And then suddenly...
Oh, I didn't even know this part.
The Matthew Shepard part, the Matthew Shepard died and it was in the headlines. And he basically is like, how can we contribute to this cultural conversation that's, happening nationally? And so he used the proceeds from Gross Indecency to fund, 8 or 10 of us going out there right after the murder to sort of just interview and not know where it was going to lead, whether we even had the right to write about it. It was such a raw wound. So anyway, I would say, to answer your question, like that ensuing year we made 6 trips out there, and there was a sort of a core of 4 of us writers who would go out there and interview and know that, in this trip we need to now get this quadrant of Laramie, their voices into this play. And so we were sort of directional, and we followed it from the murder through the trials, checking in with our regulars and finding new people and then getting them to talk to us about everything and anything. And then coming back to New York after each trip, and we were self-editing. So I'd have, 25 interviews. I'd sort of take moments of those interviews, present them to the rest of the company, and we'd rent a theater for a week, and we would build the piece through that. So that was, for me, someone who came out of the school, like, I'm just going to sit in my room and write my plays, which I still like to do. But that notion of collaboration, getting to be an actor as well as a writer, and getting to feel political as a writer, and having the courage, because I had these tape recorders in your hand when you go out there, to talk to people you would not normally start a conversation with because you're on a mission. So that was very enlivening for me to be a part of, and I cherish it. And like, I'm still close with everybody we did. It was one of those moments, where you're working with everybody, and it's nice.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I really thank you a lot, Stephen, for taking the time to talk to us.
No, thank you.
Oh, of course. And we look forward to staying in touch, obviously, and certainly seeing what is next in Belber world.
Likewise for you. What's the HBO show that you're doing?
Gossip Girl, the reboot. It's actually called The Bad Witch. Yeah, exactly. Everybody goes, oh, yeah.
No, I've heard good things about it.
It's the biggest gig in town, and in town, sort of money wise and people wise, and I'm very happy to be part of it. It's just so strange. Like I said, I was talking to one of the producers, and it sort of sucked up the air from anything else that might happen, but there isn't anything else happening, right? I mean, there is,
but not much in New York. You're right. There's not a ton in New York. Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming back slowly but surely, but without a pilot season and without those new shows, it's really interesting to see, right?
Yeah, I know it must be such a pain, and I can only hope that it's going to explode in production now, and that once we get past this, which we will, and so yeah.
Yeah, we will. Thank you again, Stephen. Look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you, Carolyn.
Nice to meet you.
Thank
Thank you.
Let's stay in touch for sure.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.
You guys.
Bye. Thank you.